Hi everyone, welcome to Life Edge. Because life is, and it doesn't have to be bad. I am joined today by Dr. Susan Nash, good friend, colleague, and our co-host. How are you, Susan?
Great. It's great to be here, and I'm really glad to welcome back Dr. Brian Matthews.
Yeah, he's always a good guest. Harold
Absolutely.
is running the video mixer and producing the show, and here we go. This show is sponsored by Relate Corporation, digital learning development, media development, corporate video, management consulting, and more. Visit us at www.relate.com. Thanks. And we are back, and joining us again, I don't know how many times, fourth time maybe, Dr. Brian Matthews in that center position of power. How are you, Brian?
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great, and glad to have you back on the show. It's always a pleasure, and you've got some interesting concepts for today. I think that'll be real interesting to the viewership and to what you guys are talking about. I guess, in essence, it was about what makes people happy at work.
Yes, sir. Ultimately so.
And that's a good one. That's been argued forever. So what does make people happy at work? What are you thinking?
Well, it's interesting because there is a multiplicitous array of things that generate happiness and enjoyment and fulfillment at work. There are simultaneous and contemporaneous activities and multiple moving parts that makes it very difficult for leaders to ascertain what is that appropriate and sensible mix for individuals to be happy, or individuals externally motivated or the internally motivated. Is it a combination of both? So am I motivated more internally than externally? If I am motivated internally, if I am a leader and I attach external motivators like money to something that an individual loves to do, would that demotivate them? So for example, if I'm a social worker and I love the job itself, I love the effect, I love the altruistic quality and the virtue of the position, and I have a liberty of doing that particular job in a very emancipated manner. But if you actually attach a salary to that, then it provides some demarcations and structure that then may demotivate me and discourage me in doing something that I really love to do. So it's a definite complex concoction and recipe, that we might love and really want to find so they don't discourage the right person.
Ooh, we had the sound cut out a little bit. Brian, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you just fine.
Okay, it just cut out a little bit. So you basically, like you're saying, and there's one, as you're talking, I'm thinking there's one variable that messes everything up always, the human. Because what makes one person happy doesn't make the next person. Some people care about money above all else. Other people don't care. Like you said, the social worker is a good example. If they're doing it well and they do it right, they love the work they do and the impact they have on society, on their clients, the people that they help. And yet they sometimes make good money, they sometimes don't. And we've seen this in other people too, that sometimes more money makes them happier, other times it makes them miserable. And it's so hard to judge what motivates what person with what. How do you come to that motivation? How do you define what makes some people happier and what doesn't?
Well, it determines and is definitely contingent upon the individual themselves. Obviously, you stated earlier that humans make it very, very difficult and very hard to determine and to conjecture, what makes an individual happy. I think it's, social engagement, understanding, having an emotional intelligence, knowing what internally, motivates someone, what externally motivates someone. If it is a job that I don't like as well, so let's just say that I am a factory worker and I'm working at a paper mill, and I really don't like the hours. I really don't like the job, even though I'm being recognized and I'm advancing in the job and I'm getting promoted. I'm not being looked over. There is no glass ceiling, whether I'm a male or a female. If I'm really disgruntled and dissatisfied with the job itself, then I would need some type of an external motivator to continue to influence me and motivate me to continue to do a job that I really don't like. So there's a concept that is entitled the self-determination theory. And so whenever you look at those uncomfortable imbalances, then you have to determine again, what internally motivates someone or demotivates someone, as well as look at those same variables externally.
Yep.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead,
One
Susan.
thing that has really fascinated me about different theories of job satisfaction is the concept of hygiene. Hertzberg and hygiene, and the idea that if you start out with certain factors that are disagreeable to a person, it's very hard to overcome that. And I was wondering what you think about the theories in time of COVID-19.
That is an interesting question, because whenever you factor in Hertzberg and the theoretical concept that I will address here momentarily actually factors in and incorporates the amalgam of Hertzberg's two-factor theory, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, Vroom's expectancy theory. And whenever you look at those hygiene and those motivating factors, those hygiene factors indicative of external factors. So a relationship with your supervisor, relationship with your peers, work-life balance, the handling of company policy and the adherence thereof, work conditions, whether they are conducive for productivity or not. And so whenever you look at those external factors and then incorporate that or fuse those, with motivators. So again, those things that are inherent to the person themselves, whether it be the work itself, the recognition, the advancement, any type of promotional activities that take place. And so an individual can be satisfied and dissatisfied at the same time. And so that is divergent from the traditional perspective that I'm either satisfied or dissatisfied. So, for example, an individual can be dissatisfied with the relationship that they have with their supervisor, but then they can be completely satisfied with the job itself. They can be satisfied with the salary, but then dissatisfied with the job. They can be given opportunities for advancement, and they can be satisfied again with the job itself because they love the job. They're motivated because of their inherent desire to be integrated, be infused, with the environment, but they may dislike the fact that the job creates divisiveness and wedge between them and their family. So whenever you factor in those two spectrums and how they are mutually exclusive, then there's definitely a very delicate balance that leaders have to be continue to be acutely aware of as it relates to job satisfaction and motivation.
So COVID-19 has an impact. So what do you see as the primary impact of COVID-19?
Again, very, very interesting question, because for our students, as an example, if you have a student that they are motivated and they are their intensity is magnified to attend college because they have an opportunity to convene in a physical setting, if that's what they desire about coming to school, then to take away that conduit to be able to function on campus, to be part of the campus culture, to be involved, interpersonally with students, with staff, with faculty. If you eliminate that amenity, then it may demotivate some students to want to come to school, because some may thrive in a face-to-face classroom, and because that option is not available, it may demotivate them and cause them not to even want to attend school if they can't attend a face-to-face setting. For professors, like myself, I still have the opportunity to teach. I still have an opportunity to be engaged with students because there are technological amenities that I utilize and use the dexterity and agileness of those technological components like Zoom and Microsoft Teams to still teach. So my motivation is still present because it doesn't take away from the job itself. So COVID-19, if it has taken away some of those elements, the opportunity to advance, the opportunity to be able to do a job that you love to do, and virtual augmentations won't afford you that opportunity to be engaged, to be interactive, and to be interpersonal, then it can definitely demotivate that same individual that is used to leaving and being involved. Now they're confined to staying at home.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because we know one person who is thrilled at being at home. He doesn't want to go to work. He's ecstatic being by himself at home. And other people miss the interactivity, the interpersonal working together with other people. And even though the meetings and all that can be good virtually, it's not quite the same. It's not quite the same as not being in. And to boot, they're saying that the isolation with lockdowns and stuff is probably the worst thing they could have done, period, because it makes people sadder, more unhappy, not able to communicate well with others. And so there's a lot of other things that everybody's just skirting around, especially those who know a little bit about quote unquote science. And they're not dealing with the human aspect of a lockdown or anything else. Basically, people are being put in a prison. And whether you think that or not, that's when you can't leave your homes. Now, there's different levels of lockdown. In some places, it's not that bad. In other places, it's really bad. So it just depends where you live, and same with jobs. What do you do and how you do it? How do you think overall this is affecting not only students but workers in terms of the psychological impact of a lockdown, of the inability to get together with people, to get together with coworkers in a way more than just virtually?
If I'm emotionally connected to my job, for example, with me being a professor, I'm psychologically connected to my students, to my colleagues, to the environment. And so if there is a sentimental value that is somewhat disrupted because of COVID-19, and I'm not able to fulfill those psychological requirements in order to be motivated to do the job, then it can be definitely detrimental, especially with redundancy and duration and familiarity, if that's what I'm accustomed to. If you take away that degree of customization that I've been afforded to craft and facilitate, relationships, understanding my environment, then if that is deprived, then you can actually see a fleeting of a psychological attachment, which may also, lead to dissatisfaction and even possibly demotivation.
Now, for example, I see you as the kind of professor I wish I had during college. There weren't that many like you. And as a result, I remember I had one professor. His name was Dr. Milt Davis. He was an ex-football player. He was my advanced biology teacher and biochem, and just a wonderful human being. And my joy of going to school wasn't so much college at that time, but it was going to see him. It was like seeing him, going to his classes. He was also my counselor at school because he did part-time work as a counselor there. So he was a teacher. He was a counselor. To me, he was a mentor. And that's what I see right now that may not be happening in schools, for example, because they don't have that access to you all the time, is the ability to see you, to talk to you, to get together maybe off campus or just to share experiences. That's a little harder in the virtual world. But so that's the only takeaway I would see that would be at least one major thing in what's happening with the relationship between the professors, the students, or anybody else. And same goes for office environments where you may work with people who are more like mentors than they are managers or anything else, and it's a little harder to mentor somebody distantly. You can, but it's a lot harder. What do you think about that?
Well, I think when, again, whenever you have, that level of redundancy and the ability to and organically interact, build relationships, whenever you become accustomed to that interaction, whenever you become accustomed to that particular culture, I think when that culture is disrupted, as organic as it is, and whenever you're accustomed to being fluid, when you're used to being in environments when it's more than just you, and so now you're isolated, and you don't have that ability to look across, look across the classroom and see a student, or come out of your office and go visit a colleague.
Right.
So one of the things that I tried to do whenever we went online back in March, maybe the third week in March after spring break, is that I wanted to supplement the absence of physically convening by establishing virtual meetings with my students, and then also providing some mechanism by which they could communicate with me via phone, via text, or via Zoom. And then I also empowered them to let me know when they did want to set up those meetings by making myself accessible. Obviously, it doesn't fully compensate for them being able to see me in person, but at least they still had access, and they weren't totally obstructed and impeded from getting in contact with me. So I know for a lot of students, just that added level of accessibility and responsiveness and the immediacy as far as responding to, any situations or any problems, even beyond typical office hours, I think it mitigated any type of strain and worry and anxiety that some students had, to know that there was a level of fluidity, there was still robust content that was being delivered, and that the faculty member was accessible at any time to answer the questions by means that made them feel comfortable.
And that's exactly why I said you're the type of professor I wish I had during college, because you are going that extra mile for the students to keep it as quote unquote normal as possible. And so kudos to you for doing that. I think that's great. Susan, what have you experienced in this? Are you still teaching, or did you take
I'm still teaching online, and I have to say that for me, when we've had like Zoom meetings, especially in March and in April when things were really scary, I think that people looked forward to the Zoom meetings as almost like connection, because we were all experiencing the same things. So maybe we weren't talking as much about the topic itself of the course, but we made connections to the changing world and real world experiences. And I think that was helpful. And I think that professors who are flexible and who listen find that they have a better experience. And those who just want to read their PowerPoints, it's not so great.
Yeah.
I think COVID-19, I don't know, it's added so much uncertainty, and people don't like uncertainty, that I was going to ask Brian what he thinks is the best way to help the job and the work environment when there's so much uncertainty.
I think during, such fortuitous times as this, as you mentioned earlier, I think communication is key. I think for individuals to have a degree of balance and some level of normalcy, I think there are some facets of normality that should be maintained and sustained as effectively as possible. I think as long as, even in, predicting and changing circumstances and predicaments such as COVID-19, I think as long as policies and direction and instruction is being conveyed in a very unambiguous manner, where it's clear, it's defined, it's easily accessible, it's very much illicit. People can actually find the information, seamlessly and easily. I think as long as that's direction that is given, and then if there's an availability for someone to answer questions, if there is, some confusion or maybe a misunderstanding in the translation, I think again it would just help mitigate any type of worry that people have, as they function, from the next one day, next 1 week, 1 month to the next. So I think constant communication and accessibility is key.
Oh, I totally agree.
What has this done, if anything, to enrollment? Are you seeing a decline in enrollment? Any change?
Fortunately, we're seeing an increase in enrollment. I just
good.
finished teaching 2 Summer 1 courses that ended on July the 3rd, and I have students in my entrepreneurship course and 12 students in my principles of management course.
Mm-hmm.
So those are typical numbers that we have. For those 2 courses, normally in the principles of management course, because it is a core course within the business core, we normally experience a higher enrollment there, but that was overcompensated by the enrollment in the entrepreneurship course. And then fall enrollment is incrementally increasing. So we're definitely seeing, divergent results than what would be expected in the midst of a pandemic. You that there would be a fledgling of enrollment, but we've actually seen the opposite.
That's great. Well, that's good news. Susan, are you seeing the same kind of things?
Pretty much so. Now, in terms of enrollments, I'm not sure because I'm not. I am seeing, for example, a lot of people are taking courses even as enrichment to diversify. For example, taking machine learning courses, robotics courses, things like that, to try to prepare for whatever our new world has in it for us.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. So, Brian, do you see any trends that are emerging out of this particular situation, as well as just moving forward? Anything that you think might result from all this?
One of the areas that we've really aspire to take a more concentrated and concerted effort into unpacking, if you will, is the realm of micro-credentialing. And one of the responses, from organizations, in the midst of the crippling effect of the pandemic were furloughs and the eradication of jobs. And so one of the things that we've seen, and which has been a trend for a number of years, is that universities and colleges are offering what are called micro-learning. And so it is an abbreviated course offering that affords individuals an opportunity to accumulate information to make them somewhat experts in the field. Not that they will be, the consummate and impeccable, expert in the field of energy leadership or in leadership and motivation, in management and computer science, computer programming, human resources, etc. But at least it gives them a general perspective to become acclimated to, those course offerings and theoretical concepts, different mechanisms in which to apply that information, and then also being able to master the information that they're introduced to and that they learn in order to apply, so then they can be reestablished in the workforce. So it provides them with an opportunity to gain some educational and technical knowledge so they can then apply that in the workforce.
That's good. That's good. Before we had the pandemic, were you doing online courses, or did you have to get a crash course and start learning how to do it?
That was your question. Was I doing online courses?
Yeah, no. The question was, before the pandemic, were you doing online courses, teaching, or is this something you had to just jump in and figure out how to get the best going?
No, fortunately, the majority of my colleagues in my college, we were already teaching online.
Oh, good.
And so Susan can attest to this. I know a lot of our undergraduate courses are online. All of our graduate courses are online. We have the liberty of deciding if we do want to teach face-to-face courses, typically on a 1 or 2 year rotation. Some of the same courses are taught online, but we can, if we want to teach either a face-to-face course or if we want to teach a hybrid course, which is half online, half face-to-face. Or not necessarily half, but theoretically half face-to-face, half online.
So you guys had this all worked out, which is great. Texas A&M just really seems
That's
like a
huge thing because, for example, in the case of certain associations, they're used to having their courses and conferences face-to-face. So now turning it all to online without actually having the platform in place and having the content in place is a massive undertaking.
Mm-hmm. And also in your case, in associations, so much business is done face-to-face.
Oh, yeah.
And that's not going to be easily done virtually, no matter how hard it is, because there's a certain amount of confidentiality and other things that happen. There's job interviews, all sorts of things in an association that you can't do virtually. Not well, at least, because there's that certain feeling when you're hiring people. You can hire remotely, but it's tricky, especially today. I mean, there's so many issues just hiring, period, that you have to be careful and whatever else.
That's true. And then also just so many executive committee meetings and and leadership, especially if it's an organization that has a lot of different chapters. Yeah, it becomes really complex.
It's hard. Well, we are out of time. Brian, sorry we had the technical issues today, but we'd love to have you back on to continue the conversation. It's always a pleasure to have you on and share what you know with everyone. Susan, any last questions or comments?
I've just really enjoyed it, and I think it's a good moment to rethink workplace satisfaction, especially given unintended factors. Yeah.
Any last comments, Brian?
Not for always, being so polite and always being so cordial and friendly, and inviting me on as a guest. I always have a great time, with our dialogue and with our discussion. I always enjoy the questions. Definitely apologize for the technical difficulties. I don't know what happened with my setup. Again, as I told you, my computer was thinking, so it just took it forever and a day to reboot. But thank you so much for being patient with me and having me on as a guest.
We know what it's like. We know what tech is.
It's great. Yeah.
Tech can be challenging sometimes, especially with all the updates going on. We had some problems today too with updates, so we know what you went through. But no, it's a real pleasure, and isn't it funny? We should all be cordial and nice to each other. It'd be so much a better world. But it's true. Every time I fly to the South, from Texas on, I always think people are so much more cordial here. And they are, and they go, no, we're not. We're rude. I mean, no, believe me, you're not rude compared to other parts of the country. So it's a pleasure to deal with people who are nice, civilized, and friendly to each other. That's important in this life. But anyway, Brian, we appreciate it. We'll have you back on soon, and best of success with everything you guys are doing. It sounds like you've got a great plan in place, and the students can only benefit. So that's great. And Susan, likewise, hang in there, and I'll see you next week. Have a good one, everyone. Thanks for watching. If you have any comments or if you want to get a hold of Brian, his information will be below. Please do so. Have a great one. Take care. Thanks.
Take care.